Start that. And then we're good there. Go live. Starting up. Perfect. All right. We should be good there. Perfect.
Nice.
All right. Well, welcome in, everybody. I know that Drake and I are really excited to be able to share with you guys today on overcoming anxiety, whether that's you're here for yourself or your child or a family member, a spouse, maybe you're a healthcare provider and you help people with anxiety. Everything that we're going to present with today is going to help you no matter where you're at on that spectrum. So, I know webinars can be one of those things. It's like, man, why don't we just present in person versus webinar? And part of the reason why we do it is winter in Wisconsin, whether it's 15 degrees below zero or 3 feet of snow, you never know in December. And the other thing is that when you can be watching something in the comfort of your own home, your brain can be more at ease as well. It's really hard for your brain to learn when it's guarded and in that protected state. So being able to watch it in the comfort of wherever you want to be will help your mind and your body be able to take in that more information that we're presenting a little bit more effectively. Another thing is Drake and I, we helped a lot of people with anxiety, and that's what we're going to be here for this whole thing. Whether you are just starting off, trying to figure out what can help me with what I've got going on, or you've got the wildfire flaring up and the anxiety is all over and you're just here to try and maybe not stop it but prevent it from spreading, getting farther out of control. So we're with you guys for that as well. Now, it's unfortunately not an easy process, and there's never a magic bullet that fixes these things. It's a journey, but know that Drake and I were here for you. Our offices are here for you along that journey.
Yeah, you're in good hands. I'm an expert on anxiety, or my own experience every day of stress and anxiety.
Yep.
No, just kidding. Yeah, we like to think about things both in their pathology, so in like a diagnostic perspective, but I think this is more of a nice overview of the natural experience of stress and heightened energy and breaching into anxiety. So yeah.
Exactly. All right. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Trevor. I'm the chiropractor here at Foundations Pediatric and Family Chiropractic, and we are neurologically focused, specialized chiropractic office. And so we're focused on not moving bones, but getting your brain and your nervous system to communicate and adapt like God created to be able to do. So these are all the people on the team here at our office that you typically would see coming in. My wife, my mother-in-law who works the front desk, and our boys like to help out and answer phones and stuff like that too. We started them training up young. So we're here for you. That's who we are. And then I'll introduce Drake.
Yeah, so I own Strive Wellness, opened it up in 2020. Before that, I did my training in occupational therapy and kind of worked through different fields within that, outpatient, inpatient, and working with older adults. But I fell in birth to three, and I just had wonderful mentors that raised me up and taught me the foundations of social emotional development. And I'm super excited to be working with Amanda and Lisa, and we get to serve clients in Barron County.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah, so how does anxiety show up in your life? It might be easier to answer, how does it not show up in your life? Maybe we should start with, where do we find peace?
Yeah.
And that's a joke, but there's a truth to that, is finding true moments of peace. We can attend to those, and that's actually later on we'll get into steps, but I thought a nice working definition of anxiety would be a good place to start. So the attempt to try to control projected threats to our safety in the future. Do you notice any problems within that wording? That stresses me out, even just thinking of what happens when we're stressed. And so if we emphasize the underlying words, so try, endless energy. We spend so many resources Googling things and searching and planning, and we take this beautiful opportunity to plan and to consider things, and anxiety is when it begins to go haywire. It's too much. We lose sight of the truth in the moment that we should be seeking. The next one, control. Control, that could be its own entire topic. Control, our white knuckle grasp on thinking that we can manifest or we can make things the way we think they ought to be. But there's a couple problems with that. But that would be another presentation for another time. Projected. So we all have our own perception of what we think are threats. I might be a little more comfortable with something, and my friend might be a little more nervous when we're driving together. And that we could talk about driving, parenting, lots of areas. Threats to our safety. So there's lots of different kinds of safety, right? Our ability to breathe, our ability to have autonomy, do what we want to do, our ability to engage in friendships and engage in lots of things at work. So safety can permeate all aspects of life, and so that's why it crops up everywhere. And then finally, future. We live in the now, and it's impossible to do anything in the future or in the past. We exist in the now. So there's a lot of problems with that. So how does it show up in our life? Well, it shows up in the now when we're trying to think of the future. So that causes us, we lose sight of what we should be doing now. And then when we spend a lot of time trying to control for factors, we end up missing the things that we needed to do in that time, like spending quality time with our kids during the bedtime routine, for an example. That's an extremely hard routine for me, Trevor.
Yeah.
Bedtime routine. I lose my peace. So that's anxiety shows up, stress shows up in a lot of areas.
Yeah. I like the what you just mentioned down there with the definition kind of we put together is the trying to control, and it's almost like even just trying and control already counteract each other with, you can't control it if you're still trying to do this other thing. So it just brings it on even more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So what we're going to learn and what you guys are going to discover today is the commonality with all these three things is the nervous system. So from a brain-body perspective, what is anxiety? We kind of talked about that a little bit, but we're going to get more from a nervous system standpoint rather than a diagnosis standpoint as well. How can you reduce your own anxious feelings today? Who do you become when you're anxious? How is your body reacting? What are you feeling through that? And how can we reduce some of those feelings to bring you back into that equilibrium? And then finally, from a parental perspective, how can you support your anxious kid when they are going through that blazing wildfire? How can you help contain that wildfire, prevent some of those major things from showing up or getting out of control and spiraling more than they really need to? So our main goal for today then is to leave this webinar with a sense of clarity, a sense of hope, and that feeling of empowerment to know that there are things that you can do for yourself or your family. There are people that can be here alongside with you, and there's options to really get to the root of where these things might be coming from.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about some characteristics of anxiety. So if we were to look at this graph right here, it shows a higher end and a lower end, and it's a range of our emotional experience as humans. When we wake up, we tend to be lower regulated, ideally for rest and recovery. And then as we get into our day, we gather more energy, and then we think of our to-do list, and then we're up high above the red, and then we're zonked at lunchtime, and then we get some food in us. And we have this range of this variability, you could say, of a normal experience of life. And our body automatically handles lots of things, and it automatically sends our heart rate higher when we get walking and when we're in work, so that it delivers more oxygen to our muscles so that we can handle the challenges that we do throughout the day. And when we sleep, it down regulates our heart rate, and it puts everything on rest mode so that we can recover and heal, ideally. And so where difficulty happens is in the range of emotions. If we experience something, and if I'm thinking from a childhood perspective, so our brains scaffold, they're building blocks on what we already have. They develop pathways in our brain, and we prefer the pathways that we learn work for us, that keep us alive. So if something happens in our childhood and it's too hard for us to handle, and it's too escalated, or if something happens when we're a teenager or adult, it doesn't matter. Something happened previously. If that range is beyond what we can handle, we might use little t trauma. That might be an experience our brain learned, and if it's too long, too big, that's anxiety stuck on. And so now our brain puts into memory, we have this function because we want to take care of ourselves tomorrow and the next day. And so if something is too big and too long, it gets stuck in our brain or in our body somewhere, and it reminds us. Memory serves a purpose to keep us safe for tomorrow. So this is kind of a nice metaphor. This vehicle, this car, our body is like a car. And any comments on
Yeah,
that?
and a big thing about that is what you mentioned. Our brain has memory too, and so when we encounter those big ranges of emotions where we get that too big for too long, and then we go down, and then we get that too big too long, it gets to be easier and easier for, again, bringing to the kids' perspective, to have that outburst, that tantrum, so those tears happening because those pathways in their brain are being solidified and grown more and more as those habits continue to happen on that same range.
Absolutely, yep.
No, yeah, there you go.
Okay, another characteristic of anxiety is our experience of time. Humans are different than animals in a lot of different ways. However, one big important difference is we can consider the future, and we can have thoughts of things we should do, and we can select from one of those ideas. We can also look back into the past, and we can dissect something that happened, and we can learn from our past experiences. If you were to think of an animal, it's they map out their pathway and they experience, this is where water was, where food was. That becomes so strong, and they go back to that. They don't think, I wonder if there's food beyond that mountain. Nope,
Yep.
I know where the food is. And so humans are unique in that. Mm-hmm. And so the problem with us, with that unique feature of our brain, it's not a bug that anxiety happens. So it's not when the problem is when we spend too much time in considering future opportunities. Again, so going back to our definition, when we try to control future problems.
Yeah, that controlling part of that then continues to put your brain into overdrive, where you're spending endless amounts of energy trying to continuously think of every possible outcome for the future instead of letting it wash over and then pass it through.
And let's give a head nod to it. Okay,
Yeah.
so what is good eustress? Eustress is in the literature. What is a healthy Christmas time? There's a lot going on. If you're considering different events that are happening, or gifts for others, you might be losing sleep. These are times when our body is used to you could call it a HIIT, high intensity interval training. So it's a tough period, but the goal is it's not too big, too long. The goal is we don't lose sleep every night. We just take away sleep because we have this beautiful planning period.
Right.
That's tough, but the purpose of giving a head nod to anxiety is that it serves a wonderful purpose that we can high throttle up to take care of challenges. However, if we don't carve out a time for peace, it will get eaten up by anxiety, or in the prior direction, depression.
Yeah, exactly. And we talk about stress in general, and that the eustress is great. And in chiropractic, we talk about the 3 T's of stress. So thoughts, traumas, and toxins. And oftentimes the anxiety part of our lives is always linked to that emotional, mental stress, but the physical stressors, the chemical stressors your body goes through also plays a role in that. And stress is going to happen, right? Stress happens in everyone's life, whether you're an infant or you're a 105-year-old. there's always going to be stress. The issue is when we have maladaptation to that stress. And that's where a lot of the times that stress gets stuck on, because we build up these stressors, and every time we encounter a stressor, it takes our RPMs up a little more, a little bit more, a little bit more, just like we're building those pathways a little easier, a little easier, a little easier for our bodies to react, or more commonly overreact to certain things. And with those stressors, it's not just these things. It's even when I talk about, for most people, it starts off in the womb, because stress on mom affects stress on baby in the womb as well, where that umbilical cord is nutrients to the baby, but it's also that neurologic circuit. So when mom's stressed and then baby starts stressed even before they're born, that sympathetic, that gas pedal, that stress gets stuck on. Then you encounter the birth process, which even if you have, the whatever perfect birth looks like to you,
whatever magic one,
it's still a stressor on that baby. Go from this nice, warm, dark place to, welcome to the world, whether there's any interventions or anything, and then it starts that whole process. So
I think that's another beautiful, nice head nod, Trevor, to life has its predictable stress periods. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I want to put a note there too. It's nothing against moms either. It's not their fault that stress is affecting stress on baby. That's just how life happens. So the biggest thing is that adaptation to that. Adaptation and resilience are some of the biggest indications of health in moving forward. So when we talk about adaptation, when we encounter all those stressors, whether it's the thoughts, traumas, and toxins, however you want to label them, we like to actually label there's a fourth T of technology now too, is when we can adapt to them, what our body does is we get stuck and locked into this stressed out protection mode. And that's that, body in that, you can see it in people too, when they get curled up and you get hunched over, and it's that fetal position, because that's that protection mode. We build up this moat and this giant castle for our body to be protected, high walls, big moat, keep everything out. And what happens is there's a couple main things that arise where problems to that. Well, before I get to the problems, that can be a really good thing. Yeah. We have this mode in our body for a reason. God doesn't create junk. He creates things for a reason.
For sure.
If a bear came into the office right now, Drake, we want that protection mode up, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The issue is when the bear's always in the room for these people, because they're always stuck in protection mode.
Or the bear is spilling your water on the floor, or, Yep.
Yeah.
You can think of a variety of very real stressful things. And the goodness inside of us knows, we have this innate movement towards peace and togetherness and developmental appropriateness for kids, right? And this just right. But the feature of our brain is, if we don't remember, if we don't intend to keep that in mind, the goodness, the truth that we want to seek, we just automatically, our body does a beautiful job of keeping us alive, not healthy.
Yes.
That's why we have to remember health.
Yeah.
And that's hard for me.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah. And another issue is, we created us with this protection mode, but you also created us with this growth mode, this growth, healing, safe mode of our body and our nervous system. The tricky thing is that you can't be in protection and growth at the same time. So we're stuck in that.
You can?
I can't. I don't know if you can.
I can, yeah.
The problem is that when we are stuck in that protection and we can't get into that healing, which we really need for part of that chronic anxiety, the blazing wildfire showing up.
For sure.
So when we talk about anxiety in general and the protection mode, whether that's for a child or adult, it kind of presents in two main ways. One is, so let's picture this. I'll get you guys in this mindset. So picture you wake up in the morning, your alarm goes off a little later than you wanted to be, so you're already a little rushed to go to work. You get the kids' backpacks on, get their stuff packed in, and you make them breakfast.
I wasn't ready for this.
I know.
It's too stressful.
I know. You got the three daughters that are like, oh man, I want this for breakfast. I want this for breakfast. And then you got little Timmy over here. He's like, no, I don't want any breakfast. And then you get them all finally eating, you get them out the door, and Timmy spilled something on his shirt. So you're already late for work, but now you gotta get him back in and changed, and
It's
so you
cold.
can still get on the
I don't
bus.
wanna
It's
get
cold. You forgot the mittens, so you gotta run back in, put him in the jacket. Finally, you get him on the bus. You're on your way to work. You get stuck behind a tractor because, of course, it's Wisconsin. So you're already late.
Yep. And pausing real quick, we'll
Yep.
get right back on that train. Thinking about the child too, their world, like it is -15 is not -15 that we know it.
Yeah.
It's like it's
100
unsafe.
below.
Yeah. Okay, so play.
Yep,
Back in.
exactly. So you're stuck behind the tractor again, on your way to work, already late. And you get to work, and you forgot you had a deadline due. So you're rushing to try and do these deadlines. Your boss is yelling at you, like, why isn't this paper on my sheet? And then finally you get done with work. You think you can go home, and you're like, oh, finally I can take a breath. And, sorry, Timmy again. He forgot he has a huge project due tomorrow morning. So you have to stay up really late with him to finish this project. So, yeah, stress.
So what is that? So what does this protection look like for Timmy?
Yeah.
Because I can feel what it looks like for me.
Exactly. And so, sorry if I put any of you guys in that stressed out state, but I want to set the picture for that. So take a deep breath here, and we'll go through that for Timmy. So for little Timmy, he has the outward and inward approach and expression of that anxiety as well. So on the outward side of things, that's where you take in the stress and then you explode. You let it all back out. At school, what that might look like for little Timmy is he can be labeled as that bad kid. He's got high energy. He's got the behavior outbursts. He's always running around, moving around. He's the kid on the perfection side that he's hard on others. So it can be hard for that social, emotional component as well, because he's lashing out at other kids. He's trying to blame other kids. He's trying to be that controlling part. And it's often can be that misdiagnosed kid of being misdiagnosed with ADHD or ODD, because they're often defiant with that fight side of the nervous system too.
Oppositional defiant
disorder.
ODD,
Yep.
And ADHD.
Yep.
Attention
deficit hyperactivity disorder. Yeah, I should have probably let those out, but
that's why I'm here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then you cover me.
Yeah, exactly. So that outward response is what people typically might think of with that fight or flight response. Most people have heard of that. Then on the flip side of that is the inward expression of that anxiety. And that's where, you're taking in those stressors and you're holding them in your body. It's the balloon that is constantly getting filled up. And for this, instead of fight or flight, it's more of this freeze response. So these are the kids that they seem really fine on the outside. You see the big, Timmy's got the big smiles in school, but on the inside he's more withdrawn, or he can be shut down, or this can be the kid that you might find, crying in the corner for no reason. Well, not no reason, but perceptively no reason.
Nice.
Or they're also the kid that we still have this perfectionist side for anxiety in general, because we want to be controlling, right? And for them, though, it's more hard on themselves, and they also are that pleaser type. So they're going to want to, do whatever you say they should do, or whatever they think their friends or family think they should do.
Because that's how they learned how things were okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. They had to do what they perceived was best instead of what should have been good for their system and their body and their nervous system.
Yep. I'm okay when ...
Yep. And with that inward response, as you might expect, there's also more of those bodily symptoms can show up. So these are the kids that can get sick all the time, or they get the nauseous, they're vomiting, diarrhea. I had a friend in high school that this was his copy paste. This was him, before schooling, sporting events and things like that. Bathroom, throw up before every single time, because that was his response and expression of that anxiety.
Yeah, so anxiety, we think brains. We think it's all in your head. Mm-hmm. However, our brain is nested within our body. And so our brains and bodies are intimately interconnected. And so we call those psychosomatic symptoms. So psycho brain, somatic body. So absolutely things crop up. If you're always, a very, very common one, right, is if you're tense and you're trying to figure things out, and you don't even realize your shoulders have been hiked up.
Start
and
to go up as the day goes along.
Yeah. And we could, I mean, there's many differences, but the big point is that it's a brain and body deal.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So this feels a little like focused on the kid. Like, what about me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
so that's
my
what you
day
can
is
do.
not safe.
So let's take away from Timmy and let's go to Dad then.
Let's go to Johnny.
Let's go to Johnny. Okay.
Okay. All right. So, and what does anxiety look like in an adult? Well, first off, looking at this picture says 1,000 words, right? We have a lot of things to do. It's a holiday season. There's a lot of planning, traveling. Maybe people critique what gifts we buy, and then we get kind of explosive and we're angry with them, or we quickly put up the walls when someone asks us about a question. And so this is where that perception is. We misperceive things as dangerous. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes family members, sometimes friends, sometimes other people are abrasive or inappropriate to us. However, if we were to take a look at just the pure side of what does it feel like as protection in an adult, when you see like the angry, the defensive, critical of others, that's not our highest and good self. Critical feedback, having a dialogue with someone, when someone attacks us and we pause them and we have boundaries, so those might be healthy responses. And if you have these responses, it doesn't mean you're unhealthy, dysfunctional. It doesn't mean you're wrong. Again, if we think back to the birth and the child, it almost feels like this guilt and this shame onto the mom if they, transferring stress. However, if there's this very real experience that happens, our brains keep us alive. And so outwardly, that looks like fighting, or I don't want to deal with this. And it's leaving, it's brushing things under the rug, choosing not to engage.
So I'm going to go out and disappear in the garage and work on things for 5 hours because that's how you deal with anxiety, right?
Oh, I thought you were going to leave this presentation for
that
just
too.
a minute or two.
That too. I need to step away for a second.
Trevor, take what you need, man. Okay, so inward. All right, so I really like Trevor's this idea right here of outward expression, inward expression. As our energy, if we think of the car and that slide goes up and down, if it spikes too high, there's a shutdown. It's almost like on your breaker switch in your house. There's too much electricity, it switches the breaker. And the house does that for a reason, because if there's too much energy coming from the street, it could cause a fire. Same with our bodies. If there's too much energy, we like bigger like that aneurysm, we blow, like there's lots of somatic things that can happen. So our body has this beautiful design. We were designed beautifully to shut down. And so if we experience too much stress, that's when we can become dissociative, foggy, or overwhelmed. That's that people pleasing. So I'm going to give up myself and I'm going to just focus on whatever it takes to pacify you. Inwardly, it can also look like that shutdown. So that gets close to the final stages when I call it zombie mode for myself, when I just feel zonked. Yeah, or zonked. There's a lot of these words that, as a kid, I heard it as spacey as well. Spacey was one where you just don't feel like you're there. So that's kind of that protection.
Yeah, zonked, not to confuse with zoinks for Scooby-Doo. Yeah.
Zoink scoops.
So one of the questions that I feel like I get asked a lot is anxiety is anxiety genetic? And for the most part, what we see is not really. It's not, your kid doesn't have anxiety because his aunt 4 times removed has anxiety. What I do like to say is it's not genetic, but it's generational. Because when you are spending time with someone, like we wrote on there, you become similar to who you spend the most time with. It's like the 5 people that you spend the most time with is who you become like,
That's
right?
that scaffolding and our natural imitation in growth.
Yeah, and so as a child, who do you spend your most time with, right? It's mom and dad.
I was going to say video games.
Video games too. That's true.
Oh, yeah, it was
Mom and dad. It's close. Yeah, sometimes it's both. Technology. And so when Johnny comes in and he's stressed from his day of work that he had, that we already talked about. You know, he slams the door shut because he had all this stuff going on at work, throws his bag down, and just goes into the room or goes into the garage and dissociates. The kids see that, mom sees that, and our bodies, we have mirror neurons in our bodies. And what they do, mirror neurons, essentially, it's a ways for our nervous system to copy how we respond or how we see other nervous systems responding or reacting. So when there's stress on one person, there's stress on everyone else that is monitoring and seeing that person in that same environment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What we have on the screen there are some of the scans that we do here in the office that actually measure energy, muscle energy, and tension, and where those things are held and how the perception of the environment is projected on that muscle energy. And so we see very similar patterns showing up with tension through the right in the shoulders, and then a lot of tension and energy through that bottom left. And so not necessarily a genetic component, but more so, like I said, a generational component.
Okay. Yeah. Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the two pictures, the
Mm-hmm.
37-year-old mom and the 4-year-old son,
Yep.
why does the son have the red on the shoulders and the mid back? Why doesn't, if mirror neurons, why doesn't he just copy mom, like with where his stress pattern is?
Yeah. So part of that is every other stressor that's going on that kid's system.
Okay.
So it's not, he doesn't just get stress from mom, but it's also, you know, his physical traumas and stresses that have been in his body, what he's eating, taking in those chemical stressors. Is he always on his phone? Maybe, maybe not. Is mom always on her phone? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows?
Gotcha.
But
maybe he's on a video game and mom's busy taking care of the house and
right,
stuff. So
exactly.
All
And
right.
so there's a component of similar stress patterns in families, but also that's not the whole picture either.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we go back to our definition, trying to control projected threats, so what we feel are threats, to our safety in the future. There's a couple flaws. We can't focus or attend and remember everything that's important right now. So we know what's good for us, but we can't keep that in mind, because energy, that stress, it will just flip the breaker system. And when it flips the breaker system, we have these distorted thoughts, these cognitive distortions, right, that creep up. So what do we do with that? Well, I would say, if you're looking at the present and the future, back to this time orientation right here, we've all heard of boundaries. And so one way to think about boundaries is, how do we bound our mind in the present? How do we spend the most time in the present moment? How do we decide on purpose to be with our kids, to be with our spouse, to be somewhere on purpose, and we set it aside for later? So ultimately, we want to practice detaching from the future. The future, it's a beautiful feature. We were created to think about the future. And sometimes too much, not sometimes, all the time.
All the time.
Too much of a good thing turns out to be a bad thing.
Exactly.
And so detaching from that and having its just amount, the right balance. And so we want to commit to our best self and highest good use of our time right now. And so,
Go ahead. Yep.
Sure. So we think of time boundaries. So how much time do we spend on something? We think of effort boundaries. So you begin to interocept, which is focusing on your body, your energy levels. You take stock at the end of each day. You take stock moment by moment, hour. How much energy do I have, the resources for what I'm doing? We do the best we can now. That can be cliche, right? Do your best. But there's wisdom in it. There's a truth in it when you experience doing the best you can now, balancing it in your best intentions. That's all you really can do.
And giving yourself grace. Giving yourself grace with that is a big thing. With doing the best that you can.
Talk about mirror neurons and imitation. So someone seeing us give ourselves talk nice or give ourselves grace or reach a peaceful moment, that begins like a node interconnected to others, or that begins imitating and rippling out.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that you mentioned on there, like keeping your best balance of, the future, like thinking about the future. And I was like, man, well, how do you know what's the best balance? And it's right here. Like, being aware of your capacity is really important. There's things that you can do to be mindful of what you're experiencing to get you to the point of, okay, I can focus on the future until I see X, Y, or Z. Do you feel that tension start to rise up in your body? Are you starting to breathe a little shallower in those light breaths? Do you feel your posture just starting to kind of tense up, or those shoulders rising up as you're thinking about this?
For both.
Or as you're speeding up a little bit as I'm talking here? Is your voice getting louder? All those things are really important things that you can keep aware of as you could just go throughout your day, but also finding that balance of thinking about the future and being instead more in that present mindfulness as much as you can.
Yeah, let's take. I like to look at things at, turn it around a little bit, a different frame. So, if the first step to build the capacity to handle stress and awareness and anxiety, sorry, not awareness, anxiety, if that's where it's at, well, there's a perfectly good reason, because there's lots of things that just creep in. So you just taking that moment to carve out intentionally, and that's good enough for today. And tomorrow, it's now I begin again. Now I begin again to create this moment within this hour. And you just create a moment hour by hour. Write yourself a note. Yep, that capacity for awareness, it's always the first step of change.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can't control anxiety, but what we can do is verbs now, in the moment. So that's why I love these things like stop, breathe, label. I want you, for everyone listening, to consider what verbs bring you towards peace and what verbs or actions lead to chaos. And then we zoom out, so there could be another verb, that's metacognition. So that's thinking about the way we think. We zoom out and develop a capacity to notice it. And then we're back in the fray because someone came in through the front door, or
Yep.
we have to move on to the next slide. So stop and develop a personal relationship with slowing yourself down. That doesn't mean slow yourself down the entire day.
Yep.
Doesn't mean stop being go to work. Stop being a parent. It's developing a relationship with a divine peace that's beyond your capacity.
Yeah.
And so breathing is a really nice feature. So we talked about psychosomatic, our brains being connected to our bodies. Well, if there's a street, it's not just a one-way street. Our body can tell our brain what to do. If you all right now notice your breath, you guys all can decide to hold your breath. And so it's actually a two-way street. When you trick your brain into calming down, the way we do that is through a long exhale. So there's a lot of really cool physiological mechanisms why that happens, but there's more and more findings like gut bacteria as well, and you back to your toxins we could talk about, but staying focused, that'll be my verb right now, focusing on these three. Because I was getting anxious
it's that
there.
rabbit trail you could go down. You can add in so many different things that there's no focus on one specific, and you just keep building up.
So the highest good right now is we're just going to focus on these three.
Yes.
Yep. So again, another characteristic I just want to think of about the human experience across cultures, religions, across everyone. We have this relationship with delayed gratification or instant gratification. So this take care of ourselves now or take care of ourselves later. So if the world was ending tomorrow, I would want all the stress possible. Well, actually, I don't know if I'd want that. I was just going to say, go and do fun stuff, but maybe
just want peace instead. Yeah.
I think what we tapped into there is we don't consider the eternal timeline as well.
Yeah.
And so, again, we have some threads and some reflections on religion that we're thinking about with this. So what does that mean for myself? But for right now, I can't conceptualize the eternal. So what is the highest truth and goodness that my Father wants for me in this moment? Certainly to create moments of peace that I can do with Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so as parents, these are three rock solid things I want you guys to think about. If you have a pen and paper, write them down. Now, it's simple. Make the day predictable, right? But my schedule changes, or we're homeschooled, and we're everywhere. There's lots of reasons. But think about the daily repeating things that happen. Okay, we're always going to eat. We're always going to sleep. We're always going to X, Y, or Z. Think of those things, but not too much energy, not too much effort, just the right amount.
Until you can find that capacity, that awareness.
Yeah. And try to make them predictable. We also think of just right expectations. So one child might be developing on a trajectory that's quicker. They might be walking sooner. They might have the fine motor control. They might be able to zip themselves up. And if another child is delayed on that developmental trajectory, it might be too much to expect that they handle that on their own for us to get out the door. So the second point I want you guys to consider is, what do they need to be successful, or where do I want to focus for them to find success? So that's an open-ended question. Open-ended questions are wonderful because Trevor and I aren't telling you guys any specific magic strategy. It's more of developing a capacity to slow down, monitor, and to engage with some of these things.
Can't seem magical though.
Can't seem magical.
It can seem magical.
Oh, it can seem magical.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the other side. That's the other side.
Yeah. Once you get to that, yep.
And what? It worked out?
Yeah.
Like, we played in the bathtub last night, and when I was playful and I let go of control, and it was time to get out, they got out of the tub. I mean, that was literally last night. Good thing this presentation was on the mind, because otherwise bath time, it just automatically creeps in. And so consistent follow through. Consistency is king. I want that to be a saying that you guys think about as parents. Doesn't have to be the perfect plan, but it has to be a consistent plan. Kids try to orient towards consistency. And so whatever discipline strategy, whatever planning strategy, whatever mealtime, whatever, keep it consistent. Yep. And then you make small incremental changes beyond that.
Yeah, that's great. And that there's so many ways to bring about parenting and that consistency, right? So that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm just going to pause for a moment and let you guys kind of look at what the heck's going on here.
And as we pause, if for any of those that are watching right now, if you have comments, feel free to let us know in the comment section, and we'll try to answer those. I should have said that right away, but if you're still listening, here's the time to ask any questions through the comments too. And as we finish up here, any comments that show up, we'll try and answer those too.
Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to guide your focus into the big bolded words. So there's 4 big bolded words. Parenting styles tend to emerge in 4 quadrants. So the higher words is a parent that's more responsive, more focused on the child's needs. If you were to go to the bottom end of that, uninvolved or authoritarian, that's more of an adult focus on what I want to happen or my needs, right? And now we can go left and right. So if we go over to the left side, permissive and uninvolved, that would be where maybe we expect less of our kids. There's less structure, there's less guidance from the parents. And now if we go over to the right, we expect a little bit more. It's not that we expect too much. Well, that might be authoritarian, right? Because I said so. However, that's the quadrant that we can think of. Studies show to improve all components of mental health, we move towards an authoritative style of parenting. We're warm, so that would be responsiveness, and we're structured. That'd be the just right amount of demands. Since this is recorded and will stay up on the page, I invite you guys to Google parenting quadrants and look for yourself at some of the characteristics, or come back to this presentation and look at this slide.
Can I ask you a question too then? As a parent perspective, why shouldn't it be the authoritarian? Why shouldn't my parenting be, because I'm the parent and what I say goes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want you guys to think of, so I'll take myself.
Mm-hmm.
I can only think of myself. There are times when I am more authoritarian, when I'm more focused on my needs, and that's super important. Leadership is super, super important. There are times when I'm less involved. So when I'm zonked out my own physiology, I had way too much going on, and there's times when I'm less structured and when I'm less warm and I'm in that uninvolved. So that would be, I'm not attending to their needs in every waking moment. So there's health in all of this. So your question is why shouldn't it be my way or the highway? If you think about the beauty, zoom out the timeline, zoom out to when your child is an adult. If we think back, children have mirror neurons and imitate us. Do we want them to be the parent that that shouts, yells, punishes immediately? Or when we're a grandparent one day, would we like them to have a dialogue with their kids? It's fun because when you can think of someone else, or when you can think of a friend or your kid one day, all of a sudden our brain loses some of the distortions.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, yeah, I'd want that.
Right.
But then when we zoom back into us, it's like, no, my way.
Yep, exactly.
Because we experience a dysregulation. So there's benefits to all of these styles. We want to orient and move towards the highest good. That would be truth.
Yeah, that's great. So what else are things that we can do as we talk about this? Well, we know that throughout all this there can be things going on inside the castle. That's, the fire's in the castle, and then it's hard to put out because we're already in this protection, the wildfire.
In your body.
Yep.
So this castle.
Yep. And we know, so that your brain gets information from the environment. We know that. If you see a spider, how you respond to that. If you see your friends or you go to the store, how are you responding to those things? Your brain also tells your body what to do. We know that as well, right? Your brain tells your heart to breathe. When you encounter a food that doesn't resonate with you, your brain tells your body how to get rid of it. And you encounter a bug, your brain tells your immune system how to fight it.
Vomiting is healthy.
Runny noses, this time of year, runny noses, coughing, sneezing. It's your body expressing health. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
Getting that stuff out.
Getting all the junk out. To an extent of, does it last? Is it chronic? That kind of thing. But what about information from the body back up to the brain? Because that's a big thing that we can also do. Not only here, but also at your own house with Drake, is what Dr. Sperry says is 90% of stimulation and nutrition to the brain is developed or generated by movement of the spine, which is crazy. That's a lot of information, 90%.
Yeah.
And how that happens is by proprioception. So big word for where is your body in space. It's what tells me that I can stand on one leg without falling over is because of proprioception, being able to allow my body to contract other joints, release other joints to be able to keep that stabilization. And in order for your brain to feel safe, it needs to know where your body is. It needs to know where that proprioceptive input is. And it needs to be able to do that because that proprioception is also how we get some more information from our environment. When we are, the opposite of that is when we have less proprioceptive or not enough proprioception in there, our brain substitutes that, our body substitutes that with nociception or pain signals or noise. And so when we have lack of this proprioception, this movement, that's really flooding the brain even more with this noise and nociception. And so what we find from this chiropractic perspective is interference to the nervous system can decrease that overall proprioceptive input back up to the brain, which I'll get to here in just a second. And that will then increase the noise and nociception and that signaling to the brain. So we get more and more stress and sensations up to the brain compared to what should be there. So things to improve proprioception can be a really big improvement towards anxiety symptoms, like giving a big bear hug, joint compressions, exercise and movement. All those things are such great inputs for the brain and the body.
Crawling for kids.
Yep.
Rolling, jumping, falling down. All of these tailoring to where should my body be? How fast should it move? What can I tolerate? What's healthy? So these wonderful ways that kids are joyful and energetic,
Yes.
it's healthy for them.
Yeah, and it's sometimes, most of the time, it feels like a lot, right? Kids are running around, jumping around, but their bodies were created so intelligently. Their bodies are doing what they're supposed to do to be able to get more of that stimulation and input back up to the brain so the brain can have the stimulation and nutrition that it needs.
So that would be the responsiveness category. So that would be the warmth. If you go back to the quadrant, that's giving a head nod to children's developmental needs and their sensory experience of the world. And now if we move towards authoritative, the healthy one, that'd be more demands. So sometimes in the waiting room, we sit down in the chair and we wait to run and jump. And then when we get outside in a safe, not in the parking lot, that we can run and jump in cartwheels. And so it's just this beautiful balance.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's things that you can do. Then now we'll get to how we personally can help with freeing that interference, that stuff to the nervous system up. So doing foundational social emotional skills, which is what Drake's expertise is. He'll talk about that here in a second on what that looks like. Things like the reflex integration, the rhythmic movement training, things that help to integrate what primitive reflexes are still there. So reflexes that we're born with, or reflexes that develop in the womb that we should have integrated by certain time frames. Those kind of things and movements training can help to stimulate that proprioceptive input as well. And then I'm a bit biased for the neurologically based chiropractic care because that can be really important and really great for the nervous system and the body. Because that, like we talked about, it's not an alignment issue, but a communication issue. So there's a lot of different kinds of chiropractic care out there. And with that specific neurologic chiropractic care, it's a nervous system thing that we're working on. Clearing up that interference between the brain and the body so we can have clear and conscious communication back and forth so we can have good input and great perceptions of the environment so we get good proprioception, less of the noise, to be able to turn that noise down, calm that fire down a little bit more and a little easier. And I'll put my little plug in here is if you want to have some of those fewer moments of the fire blazing, feel free to give us a call, send us a message, comment if you want to see what your scans might look like or how we can help here at our office if you are experiencing something along the lines of anything we talked about already so far.
Sure, yeah. And the three foundations of what Strive Wellness does to serve clients is keeping skill development interventions play-based, relational, and collaborative. So kids learn through play, experiencing. I do as well. I like to be hands-on. Sometimes you have to run into the walls and run into roadblocks, and you become the thing that gets through the challenge. So having your kids join along in difficult things. In another presentation we did, we talked about cracking eggs for an omelet. So beginning to take your daily routines and, well, I don't have time to play with my kids. I don't have time to collaborate with them. That is true. Lots of things can be busy. I'd invite you guys to think about what are ways that we already do things. How can we insert more dosages of connectedness together?
Yeah. So then is there some ways to see you a little bit more specific, right?
Yeah, so how Strive Wellness serves clients in the community is specifically through the Barron County CCS program. So we're a contracted provider there, and you'd have to be enrolled in that program to be able to work with us. So unfortunately, we don't do private pay or open to the public at this time. However, if you want to learn if CCS is right for you, I encourage you to dial that number there and speak with a worker.
Yeah, and then our side of things, we are able to see people right off the street, depending on that private pay, whatever they want to do there. For us, when you come in for a first visit, we'll do a full set of neurologic scans, see where your nervous system, your kiddo's nervous system, family member's nervous system is at a baseline, and discuss those goals and health challenges that your body has been experiencing. And then you'll come back for another visit where we'll go through all those scans and we'll let you know if we can be that help for you. We'll tell you what we found, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, if that's something that we can even help with. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it'd be good to take due diligence to slow down for a moment and consider. Because sometimes things aren't just stressful. Sometimes things are not just a season. Sometimes things uh, they they really overwhelm and take over and maladaptive, as you used, Trevor. So I just want you guys to consider again taking a relational approach. Bring someone in for help. A nice first step would be to talk to your physician about stress, anxiety. Having another ear, another profession whose duty it is to consider what you're going through can help orient you and can help guide you. And again, if your primary care physician is not hearing your needs, hearing your difficulties, seek someone who does listen to you. And that's a head nod to there's lots of things to attend to. And so we want a nice serve in return. We want the ability to be seen and heard and guided. Yeah. And so that next step into, deeper mental health journey would be consider working with a counselor. Studies show that the primary effectiveness in working with a counselor is not the specific type of counseling like CBT, DBT, psychoanalytic. It's more about the therapeutic alliance, the relationship that you develop along the way, joining in on that journey. So if you happen to work with a counselor and it's not going well, a common anxious cognitive distortion is counseling's not for me, or it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And that is the enemy twisting and distorting a beautiful process that God gave us for co-regulation. We tap into Him. We tap in sometimes on earth. It works through others. We tap into counselors. So if it's not working out with a relationship with the counselor, I highly encourage you, try another one or two. And it's okay to take a break and then retry it again later. More personal DIY things you could do is start writing it down. Start writing things down, taking notes. Again, a common feature. It's not a bug. It's a feature of our brains, of our wiring, is we're going to forget things. Journaling helps take intentional moments for you to enter into a mindful opportunity. Speaking of mindful, a meditative yoga experience, mindful experience, there's lots of different opportunities that it's inherent, implicit within the exercise or the tradition to enter, to remove things out of your mind to create peace. And then finally, I'd highly encourage you guys to think when you have time, space, and when you're putting effort into considering your health and handling anxiety, remember we're psychosomatic, we're brains and we're bodies. So I want you guys to explore different dimensions of what does it mean for me to be healthy and well. It'd probably be good if I had a family. It'd probably be good if I dealt with some emotions I experienced. It'd probably be good to consider spirituality, my physical being. So all of those dimensions of wellness, that gets into a rhythm of considering I'm not just me in the moment drowning. I can be the person who is considering wellness in other dimensions. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, it's good.
Cool.
Yeah, it's not just one facet. It's multiple facets of our lives that contribute to X, Y, or Z, and so it's important to explore those other facets as well.
As you triggered just a really cool saying in psychology and mental health is, as the tide rises, all boats rise together. And so anxiety can be one of those things. Your energy, all of your energy is sucked into it. It steals from you. It lowers the tide. So across your job, across your finances, your family life at home, it can begin to steal away other areas of your life that you didn't intend it to. And so as the tide rises, as you become more healthy, more physically active, remember, psychosomatic, as your heart, your cardiovascular system gets healthy, you develop a greater endurance to handle more challenges.
So I just want to thank you guys all for joining us here over your lunch period, over our lunch periods. If you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. Happy to answer any questions that you might have, get you in touch with some people that could be a great support for you. I know we have some good resources for that. for you if you're interested. And if you want to get started on what that would look like for being with Drake, or either Drake or I, feel free to reach out for that as well. Or if you have any questions about anything we talked about, feel free to either email us on there, comment on the video whenever you watch it, send us Facebook messages. We're happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking this time. This time was valuable. It's important. You guys got a lot going on. Thank you for slowing down and taking the time to consider this. I encourage, think about those verbs. And what I'm going to do after this, I'm going to just take a moment to sit here with you and enjoy a few minutes before we have to go into the fray.
Sounds great. All right. Thank you, everyone, for hopping on.